You have given us not only an enormous majority, but an enormous task.
We will stand with you.
The Liberal Party has always been a common sense, practical political party.
The government of Australia has changed.
There's more to do, and now is not the time to turn back.
We have not been elected to be just a pale imitation of the government that we have replaced.
I know that I can make decisions that can improve the future of our country. That's incredibly powerful.
How good is Australia?
I confidently believe that our best years are ahead of us, not behind us.
In the midst of World War II, it was Robert Menzies who denounced another conflict, the class war, as a false war. Menzies observed there were many Australians, salary earners, shopkeepers, skilled artisans, professional men and women, farmers and others who were neither rich enough to have individual power nor organised for pressure politics. These hard-working Australians, he said, were envied, taxed and taken for granted, and yet they were the backbone of the nation. To Menzies, they were the forgotten people. And it was Menzies who recognised that by encouraging their ambition, effort and readiness to serve, that we could set the essential conditions for Australia's success. So 80 years ago, the Liberal Party of Australia was formed to serve all Australians, not sectional interests, to oppose the Labor Party, strive for an end to the class war, and take a stand for the forgotten people.
This is the house that you built, you and your fathers. You built it in the name of democracy, as the parliament of a free nation, a place in which your liberties would be safeguarded. What has it become in recent years? The headquarters of irresponsible socialists, a house of disruption. In the meantime, homes are scarce, living costs extortionate. Under Liberal government, the house that you built will again become the seat of responsible government, your safeguard against tyranny, a house truly dedicated to the freedom of the Australian people, to the achievement of progress, development and prosperity. On December the 10th, vote Liberal.
In 1949, the Liberal Party was elected to government where it would remain for 23 years. From the outset, the Liberal Party and government sought to promote the centrality of Australian family life through practical measures that included an end to rationing, the extension of child endowment, and the encouragement of home ownership. Improving the education of young Australians was one of Menzies' great achievements. Tax relief for school fees and the extension of funding to Catholic and independent schools respected the choice of many parents. While young Australians also gained from the expansion of universities, Commonwealth scholarships, and the establishment of colleges of advanced education. Menzies' time as Prime Minister was marked by some of the great nation-building programs of the last century, including the Snowy Mountains Scheme. Menzies and his government shaped new relationships for Australia. The ANZUS Treaty was signed, the cornerstone of Australian security for over 70 years. And the Australian-Japan Trade Agreement of 1957 was central to our progress as a trading nation. Menzies' legacy was a stable, prosperous and optimistic nation, confident in the world with an economy that had quadrupled in size and millions more Australians living in their own home. Prime Minister Harold Holt continued the program of economic reform that he began as Treasurer. Among these was the introduction of decimal currency.
In come the dollars, in come the cents, to replace the pounds and the shillings and the pence. Be prepared, folks, when the coins begin to mix on the 14th of February 1966.
Who are you?
I'm Dollar Bill, and I've come to tell everyone.
Tragically, his time as Prime Minister was cut short. Holt's successor, John Gorton, initiated the Australian Industry Development Corporation as well as the Australian National Line. He extended federal assistance for science laboratories and schools. After being Treasurer and Minister for External Affairs, William McMahon became Prime Minister in 1971, where he continued the government's record of economic stability. During the 6 years spanning Holt, Gorton and McMahon as Prime Minister, the Liberal Party provided an engine for social progress, including an end to the White Australia policy and the successful 1967 referendum, removing the ban on women as permanent public servants and entitling female employees to equal rights of pay, welcoming Senator Neville Bonner as the first Indigenous parliamentarian, and continuing to build bridges with the world through the induction of Australia into the OECD. But by 1972, Australians decided it was time and elected Gough Whitlam's Labor Party. Within the space of 3 years, mortgage rates had risen from 7 to 10%, the unemployment rate had doubled, and the inflation rate tripled. In 1975, Malcolm Fraser promised to turn on the lights.
Australia, you've been sleeping, brought down to your knees. We've lost a lot of living in the dark of these 3 years. We can look towards the future and the way things ought to be. Turn on the lights, Australia. It's up to you and me.
Sung by Renee Gayer, written and authorised by T. Eggleton for the Liberal Party.
As well as halting the economic slide of the Whitlam years, the Fraser government reaffirmed the Liberal Party's commitment to families with the introduction of family allowance, the abolition of estate and death duties, and the automatic indexation of pensions. Margaret Guilfoyle was appointed as the first female cabinet minister with a portfolio, and then the first female minister for finance. The Fraser government created the Federal Police, increased defence spending, and opened the Australian Institute of Sport in 1981, nurturing many future champions. The gift of welcome was extended to large numbers of non-European immigrants, while the environmental credentials of the party were strengthened by the banning of mining on Fraser Island and whaling in Australian waters, and by the declaration of the Great Barrier Reef as a marine park. The benefits of later financial sector reforms also owed their origins to the efforts of the Fraser government through the Campbell Report into the Australian financial system. Following the 1983 election defeat, the Federal Liberal Party faced its longest period in opposition. Led by Andrew Peacock, John Howard, John Hewson, and Alexander Downer, this was a period of debate and renewal, during which we were reminded that unity was a necessary condition for government. In leading the Liberal Party to the 1996 election, John Howard drew upon another lesson from our party's formation. Just as Menzies gave voice to the forgotten people, so did Howard make a stand for the Australian mainstream.
When you told the battlers of Australia that you... And as the battlers of Australia, why have you betrayed those battlers?
Against Labor's backdrop of economic insecurity and wrong priorities, the Liberal Party pledged to govern for the many, not just the few.
Better future for our daughters, better future for our sons, better future for our families, and this country we all love. For all of us, not just for one, for all of us, not just for some, not just for some, but for all of us, for all of us, for all of us.
The Howard government pursued policies in the national interest like reform of tax, industrial relations, and the waterfront. These initiatives made Australia a more productive place, lowered personal taxes, and helped produce over 2 million new jobs with higher real wages and fewer strikes. The Howard government also took steps to restore the work ethic and self-esteem among those who had been neglected by introducing Work for the Dole. John Howard and Peter Costello fixed the budget, repaid Labor's debt, and endowed Australia with the Future Fund. Under Liberal and Nationals' economic management, inflation was halved. Unemployment was reduced to 4%, the lowest level since the 70s, and interest rates to the levels of the 60s. After the tragedy of Port Arthur, the Liberal and Nationals government took action with national firearm legislation. Since then, the rate of gun deaths and gun homicides have fallen by around 2/3. They also reinvested in our defence and security forces to meet the security challenges in the aftermath of September 11 and the Bali bombings, while increasing stability in our region. The Howard government upheld the Liberal Party's strong commitment to health and education, respecting choice and insisting on stronger education standards through mandatory literacy and numeracy testing and the teaching of values in schools. After 11.5 years, Labor returned to power, but it wasn't long before they got on the wrong track.
Right now, up to $8 billion is being wasted on school hall rip-offs. Right now, Labor's insulation disaster is putting 240,000 homes at risk. Right now, illegal immigration is out of control. Right now, the cost of living is pushing families to the edge. Right now, Labor's debt is growing by over $100 million every day. More Labor, more waste, more debt, more taxes.
Authorised B. Lumley, Liberal Party, Canberra.
In early 2008, Australia had wall-to-wall Labor governments for the first time. Yet under the leadership of Brendan Nelson, Malcolm Turnbull and Tony Abbott, the Liberal Party showed its resilience and ongoing relevance to mainstream Australians. After almost returning to government in 2010, the Coalition won the 2013 election in a landslide. Under the leadership of Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull and Scott Morrison, the Coalition government once again put Australia back on course. Labor's carbon and mining taxes were repealed, boosting confidence in our economy. Landmark trade agreements were delivered, creating better access to 2 billion customers. The Coalition government once again secured our borders, strengthened our defence force, and delivered the landmark AUKUS agreement. Small businesses were protected from law-breaking unions. Over 10,000 kilometres of new roads were delivered, along with investments in nation-building infrastructure, including Snowy 2.0, Inland Rail, and a new Western Sydney International Airport. After Australians had a say, Australia legislated same-sex marriage. The Coalition government delivered tax relief for workers, achieved the lowest small business tax rate for 50 years, and made record investment in schools, hospitals and medicines, and Medicare bulk billing reached an all-time high. With a stronger economy and the first balanced budget in 11 years, Australia was in a position of strength to face our greatest health and economic crisis since the Great Depression. Australia's health response to COVID-19 was world-leading, saving tens of thousands of lives, and our economic recovery was stronger than any advanced major economy. After almost 9 years in government, over 2 million jobs were created, with the lowest unemployment in 50 years. However, in the past 2 years, Labor's bad decisions have led to high inflation, a housing crisis, unaffordable energy, security failures, and a divisive referendum. And Australia recorded the biggest fall in real disposable incomes in the developed world.
I want to say to every Australian tonight that my vision is to get our country back on track, to make your life easier, to make us safe and secure again. Labor has forgotten the main principle of governing. It isn't the people who serve the will of the government. It is the government who serves the will of the people. I came to this parliament having served my community as a police officer and as a successful small business owner employing 40 people. I've had the honour of serving Australians on the front bench since 2004 in many portfolios under 4 Prime Ministers. My team and I have the experience to get our country back on track and to support everyday Australians. Australians can't afford another 3 years of the Albanese Labor government. At the next election, it will be a time for change. A better change for you, for your family and for our country. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Over the next year, the Liberal Party faces one of its toughest campaigns. We also remember what we've achieved in the past 80 years. We remember why we've been driven to make Australia stronger. We remember Menzies' warning that the class war is a false war. And we will always remember the forgotten people.